Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 46 of SDRescue. My name is Austin Fuller, and I am joined with Grayson Fulbright, my co-host and copywriter extraordinaire. And today we are going to be looking at a sequence of emails that I'm not sure we've touched on. I don't know that we've touched on, we may have touched on one, but I can't remember the last time we looked at resurrecting closed lost opportunities. So Grayson, what are your thoughts on today?
So I think this is a big topic, and you're right. We haven't really covered this much because we tend to focus on like cold emails, starting conversations with prospects that have no idea who the seller and brand are. But what we're looking at today is what I consider to be called re-engagement, which is a very normal thing that I think, AEs know about, SDRs especially have to do it. Essentially, the idea is that most of the time people aren't going to be in market when you reach out, or most of the time people aren't going to be ready to talk to you when you reach out. And so whether it ends up as a closed lost deal or ends up as just cold and lost in your CRM, it's really beneficial to have a strategy to re-engage people that do know your brand, but just haven't kind of started on that sales journey. So we'll be looking at kind of a way a lot of, I think, sales organizations approach re-engagement when they're trying to, like Austin said, resurrect an old deal. And we'll go through some feedback to kind of improve how you do that and make sure that you are presenting a good experience as you're going through it. Because I do think the big point I want to make as we go through this episode is that re-engagement is nothing like cold email or nothing like cold outreach. They're two completely different environments talking to two different audiences with different contexts. So I think we'll kind of hop into that a little as well.
Yeah, I think that we're going to look at a whole sequence, luckily, of at least not a whole sequence, but 3 emails. We're not going to rewrite all 3 of them, but we're going to look at the initial sequence that I was sent of 3 emails. And it, like you said, it does demonstrate, I think, what a lot of the salesperson's assumptions are when they go to go and contact people that have had opportunities with the company previously. I know SDRs have to do it. I know AEs do it a lot. And it's one of those like sales training adages that like there's gold in there. You got to sift through your old deals. I remember that was always something my sales manager would tell me is like, oh, you're leaving deals on the table if you're not contacting your old deals every 3 to 6 months or something, whatever the time frame was. And they're right, but I think the way that people go about it and the assumptions people make about those deals are not necessarily correct. So we'll go and jump into the rewrite here. Let me make sure I share the right screen here. All right, do we have Google Sheets? I need to zoom it into 150, but make sure I have the right screen up this time.
We do.
Perfect. All right. I'll go ahead and read it. It's a thrilling read. Hey, Austin, I know things have been crazy these past few months, and previously it wasn't the right time for you and your team to consider our company. But I would appreciate the opportunity to reignite the conversation and revisit how our company can support new arcs. Would you be open to reconnecting? Grab some time on my calendar here. That was the initial one. And then the next day, they sent out a obligatory emoji. Hi, Austin, thoughts on reconnecting? And then about 2 days after that, they sent me this third one. Hi, Austin, I'll shoot straight with you. I feel like we initially missed the mark on discussing how our company might be able to help new arcs, and I'm hoping we could give this another try. Since we last spoke, our company has made some notable updates to our platform. Any interest in reconnecting? Feel free to grab some time on my calendar. All right. Let's break it down into the color codes here. Color code brought to you by Grayson. Grayson, what are your thoughts on this? And maybe you want to shed some light on why you color coded some of the stuff you did and how that works.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I think this is a perfect example to kind of walk through the common approaches that salespeople or teams have with re-engagement. And it all goes down to the only 3 colors that you really see here, which is talking about your brand, trying to share updates, share information about things maybe the prospect's missing. 2 is personalization or assumptions that you're trying to make. Maybe that's assumptions based on your own research. Maybe that's assumptions based on your past conversations, since this is a lost deal. And finally, the third method that you usually see is like storytelling of some sort. You usually often see this in re-engagement in the form of like case studies or a blog post. Usually when people are doing that monthly outreach, they'll just go in and maybe like drop a few lines about the case study and kind of share stories to really try to get these deals activated. Because a lot of people see re-engagement as, oh, we're targeting an audience that it's not that they're not in market, they're not interested in us. And I think a lot of salespeople approach it that way. And so what you're looking at here is really like the three most common ways that I kind of see re-engagement going on. And I don't agree with the way that this person went about this re-engagement style. I think the amount of assumptions in this email, and I think the amount of like attempts at leveraging social capital or attempts at trying to like either be concise and just be like, hey, thoughts, or maybe saying like trying to act like you're being transparent and saying like, oh, I'll shoot straight with you, maybe I like didn't do this right. You know, all of these are plays that we've heard of or seen before, but they're plays that I think that have been worn out. It's like it used to work. I think even a few years ago, where you're like, oh, if you follow up on a step one email and say, oh, you know, I made a mistake, I wanted to reach out and like look all human like and try to get on your radar because look how human I am and look at my mistakes. They used to be really effective, and I think this person was trying to make that work in the third email. You go to step two, they're trying to use an emoji style sequence, like Austin reference, where it's like you're just trying to like bump it to the top of the inbox. And then going all the way back to the first email, they tried to use a combination of basically telling a story about assumptions they made after your last conversation to try to get you interested. So that's kind of a recap of, I think, the strategies I'm seeing here for these three steps. And Austin, I'll kind of let you get into where this kind of falls apart and what can be improved. But I think overall, all three of these strategies could be used in a re-engagement. And I even use these strategies. I just think that all three of these would need rewrites or need adjustments so that it's done correctly and it's not damaging the relationship that you're trying to revive.
Yeah, so I want to translate this first one for everyone out there. Hey, Austin, I really need to add some new opportunities to my pipeline and saw you were an old opportunity in the CRM, thought I'd message you without any effort and put you in this automated sequence because I really need some pipe. Seal it. Any interest? Agoji. Next. Hey, Austin, guess what? I'm really desperate for a deal because my one-on-one's coming up in like a few hours. So if you could give me another shot, that would be great. Grab a link on my calendar. That's how I read this sequence. And look, the whole fall on your own sword thing, here's why fall on your sword doesn't work in the third email. Because I haven't found one thing in here that has anything to do with our deal previously. Like anything, not even like the reasons we started talking to them in the first place. I just don't understand why you would go to re-engage opportunity. Like we had multiple meetings with multiple stakeholders. Like we even had the C-level executive decision maker on one or two of these calls with this company. So there should have been, now maybe they didn't take notes. I don't know. Like that could be true. It's been a little while. It's been a while actually, maybe 8 months, maybe longer. But like there's a heap of information or data you could have used, and there's just no mention of it. And I don't understand why company, like I actually do understand, because like I said, either the rep or the manager or the department needs pipeline, and they know that, you know, because if you notice it's coming up on end of Q2, so you want to start reaching out to build pipe for Q3 right now, because their sales cycle is about 60 to 90 days. This is the emerging enterprise commercial sales team, not enterprise. So their sales cycle is going to be 60, 90 days. And sorry, full disclosure, I'm really intimately aware of how this company's sales team operates and their ideas because I've interviewed with this company with the head of sales for this division. So full disclosure. Um, and so as I'm reading this, I feel like there was a lot they could have used that didn't, and I'm just put into a pile of old closed lost opportunities that got shoved into an outreach sequence. And the reason this doesn't work is because you've taken what could be a very relevant or targeted conversation and made it completely irrelevant and generic. It's very like, as sellers, we always try on our cold emails to really personalize and hyper target. We want to be targeted and have the right personas and write all these custom scripts and sequences. But then when it comes to resurrecting deals, or like you call it re-engagement, so I'll stick with that word, re-engaging opportunities, we totally punt all of the stuff that, like, think of all the discovery we had, and while things could have changed, I think underlying mode, like, at least you could start from a point of context or relevance and then try and add something new in the equation. I don't know, that's just my read on it. That's my take on it. Is this entire sequence is written self-serving of the salesperson and this company's need, and not at all towards the buyer. The buyer isn't present in this sequence.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit it on the head at the very end there. There's nothing valuable or new in terms of information for the recipient to digest. Like, I mean, I was just rereading it to make sure, and like the only thing that's mentioned in terms of anything that would be semi-relevant information to you is the fact that they made some vague, notable updates to their platform.
Super vague.
That's a big miss on my end. And then another thing to keep in mind too, this is specifically for re-engagement. I'm glad you gave me context on kind of the timeline behind how long this deal was cold. Another issue here is that they're lacking differentiating information about what makes their brand unique and what their brand is about. Whoever watches SDRescue often knows that I'm a big proponent of being like concise and holding your cards and not disclosing too much information when you're doing cold outreach, because it's just like filler space. It's not as important. You can get to some of those things or most of those things once you engage in a sales conversation. But I think for re-engagement, that's different. When we kind of break down Austin's situation, this salesperson has past experiences, past information, past opinions from stakeholders, past game plans and visions and initiatives, and all this really invaluable information that they could include really easily in the email to like pinpoint them and say, hey, this brand isn't just some random brand reaching out, start a conversation. They know who we are and have at least talked and brought us through their process to see how we align. There's a little bit of a past relationship there. And I think this person just doesn't, it's almost like they went that route, but just extracted all the personalization. I feel like you could send this to any deal, whether it was, closed lost, or whether it was just a no-show discovery call, or whether it was somebody who said, yeah, I might be interested, and then doesn't respond, right? It's like the same style of re-engagement. There's nothing special here referencing why you're re-engaging. Because for me personally, I don't know about you, Austin, but like when I go through a buying process with a salesperson, it's usually because I've verified that it might be worth my time and it's something that I might find valuable. And so just you referencing, hey, you got on a call with me, like that immediately puts you among like 90% of the other stuff that I get in my inbox, because it's like I don't really respond to most of the emails I get. I usually don't even read most of the emails I get. So if you have the right to say, hey, we last chatted on this date, or hey, remember when we had that quick call about your situation, that is personalization that I think is valuable today, because buyers have to deal with tons of salespeople. They have a very limited purview of salespeople that they'll actually deal with and spend time with and put on their radar. And so just remember that when you're re-engaging opportunities, that there's so much ammo you can use from past experiences, even if it's not necessarily positive, to try to either re-engage the conversation or start it over again on a better foot.
Yeah, the other thing about it is that this is obviously, I talked about it a little bit, is the way I categorize this writing style is a salesperson writing to themselves. Like when it says, things have been crazy these past few months, or I'll shoot straight with you, these weird, like, isms we plug into our writing as salespeople because we're trying to create some imaginary rapport. The problem, it's filler words like in person that might make sense, like that are just like the small talk, right? Not meaningless small talk, but just like how you kind of ease your way into a verbal conversation with someone new. But that only works in person dynamics. In written words, that just doesn't make sense. It's just fluff and it's just filler, and it devalues your message because one, they put the filler stuff in the most important spot, which is the preview, right? It's the first line. The other problem with it is that it doesn't help me relate. It makes me think you have no clue how to relate to me over writing, which is done very differently than you would do in person. So just a suggestion to SDRs and salespeople out there, because look, I did it. I'm telling you, like I've committed this sin heinously as an AE. And I even still do it sometimes when I'm doing a draft, like a first run, if I'm just trying to cobble ideas together, it'll be in there and I'll have to throw it out later. But don't write to yourself. Don't do this small, funny, rapport building chat or small talk. We need to move on to the rewrite. But just these first two lines of these emails here are just you're writing to you're talking to yourself. Okay, rant over. We'll go to the rewrite. Grayson, I'll have you read it because I've been talking a lot.
Rant over. That's okay. I can take it from here. Cool. Awesome. So, hi, Austin. Are you familiar with this competitor? When we last spoke, you said you were struggling to drive first-time user adoption of the MyNewArcs platform because you lacked walkthroughs and a cohesive onboarding experience for new users. Since our last conversation, this competitor, one of our customers, has seen new user adoption of their platform increase by 15% from adding walkthroughs alone. Would you be interested in revisiting this?
Okay, look, I'll be the first to say this isn't a super compelling email, but in my opinion, I mean, there are some things it does right. There are some things it doesn't. It's not my favorite rewrite, but I will say that going into one of the things that I know that people would say is, well, how am I supposed to load up? The reason why people don't do this is because I can't load up 5,000 closed lost opportunities or 500 closed lost opportunities and send it out to all. You don't necessarily have to use a competitor. You could use somebody that's in a similar industry, right? Another cybersecurity company, any cybersecurity company, I think would have the same reaction with me if they said, hey, are you familiar with this? But the competitor in my mind is what really grabs my attention. Is if I got an email with a preview line from someone that I had spoken to previously, said, hey, are you familiar with your competitor? I'm at least curious enough to open it. At least that was my thought. And yeah, the other parts are that I focused on what we talked about before, what the big issues were that we described as prospects, showed how if you have one of my competitors as a customer, it's gonna be super compelling. I'm gonna want to get on the phone with you. It's not always ideal. That doesn't always happen. Again, you could use a similar industry company. At this point, you're kind of leveraging social proof or people with parallel issues. Any SaaS platform would work, but ideally, the more it looked like me, the better. Would you like to revisit? That was it. I even did he say revisit? I can't remember if he did. Reconnecting was what the salesperson above used. I used revisit instead. What's your thoughts, Grayson?
I really like this, and I think you could even cut down the intro a little bit and kind of get to the point and make this an even more powerful email. And one thing that I would recommend to anyone who's doing this style of re-engagement, I do this all the time when I am re-engaging MQLs. You can do power statements involving the word you and say something like you mentioned or you shared, and you can use that as a quick personalization variable that you could use to kind of go through some high converting re-engagement campaigns. Because the idea is if they're like marketing qualified, if they're like worthy enough to stay in your database, then they're worthy enough to keep in touch with and maybe hit them at the right time to get a conversation restarted. And so you can just have maybe from your notes, if you get a call, or maybe from the notes, if you like lose the conversation, you can have notes that you can turn into quick and easy personalization. That might mean like, hey, Austin, you mentioned some struggles around driving first-time user adoption, and That's the personalization, and then move on to saying, so I wanted to reach out, blah, 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 blah. And so you can really like leverage that past information, and you don't need so many words because people are interested when other people are talking about them, right? It's like, oh, are you starting rumors? Is this something that's important to me? Like out of all the salespeople, you're mentioning my name and saying that we had a conversation, so automatically you're on my radar. What's up? And I really do like the idea of using this competitor as well. I don't know if I agree with using the first line as a question, since I think it would actually be more impactful to just kind of go into the conversation and then mention the competitor as an update so that the email is a little more focused at the beginning. But I still love the idea, because like this is what re-engagement is about, right? Like they know your brand, ideally. They know what you do. They know what your benefits might be, and also maybe how you're unique from competitors. But what they're missing is that proof, those stories, those experiences, that data to really push them over the edge. So this is a perfect example of like what kind of ammo you should be using in re-engagement. I think this is great social proof that says, hey, like, are you familiar with this competitor? You know, even if you're not in market, and even if it's not the right time yet, you know, we spoke and you mentioned this, and I don't know if this is still relevant, but one of your competitors got this problem fixed through us, right? It's like a subtle, like, it's almost like a check-in to be like, I know exactly what your problems are. You might not be facing them now. You might not be ready now, but I'm in control of this process. I'm in control of this deal, and I'm not desperate. I'm checking in because I know that, you know, topic A or topic B or topic C, they're gonna get you. It's just, it's all about timing. And I think that whole perspective between a desperate versus an in control salesperson is really what's gonna, in my opinion, is gonna make the divide between top performing sellers and struggling sellers over the next couple of years.
And I think when you, so the other thing is, it doesn't have to be a competitor. It doesn't even have to be a company in a similar industry. If you have enough data on what my problem was and what our kind of situation was, if you can find somebody, you don't even have to go for the meeting in the CTA. You could build this around a similar play where we've talked about previously. We're like, hey, can I send that case study to you? If you have a case study, who's like, hey, we spoke, your situation was X, Y, and Z. Here's another one of our customers that we signed up 3 months ago. Their situation was X, Y, and Z, exactly like you. Here's how it worked. Would you be interested in reading that case study, or could I send that case study over? Boom, you could send that off. I just think that and because I will say that the caveat I want to give here is, so like you said, with power statements, is very important for it to say you mentioned, or you said, or sorry, more stronger verbs than mentioned, or things like that, like you said before. But one of the things is that people will do that, but instead of putting what I said, they'll put in their like marketing approved features, advantages, and benefits. Like, you know, if they're like, we excel, so like, I don't know, like I can't remember what Outreach is or Sales Loft's like taglines on their homepage are. It's like, accelerate your sales 33% or whatever. You know what I mean? Like those people will be like, oh, you mentioned before you were interested in accelerating your sales. Oh, that's right. It's because some sales engagement companies have done this to me, where they've plugged in their literal marketing copy from like, I went to their website and I was like, I think I've read that before. And they've like, bullet by bullet, they've plugged their marketing copy into their re-engagement emails. Like, you were looking to streamline your success. And I'm just like, I never said that. So I will say, like, if you're gonna use the power statements of like, we discussed this, or you stated this, or mentioned this, make sure it's actually something they mentioned, and you didn't just take their words and like twist it into your marketing message. Because that loses tons of credibility.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just another point to kind of make on this in general, like really, really high caliber sales teams and like fast growing companies are leading with that form of re-engagement in some cases. So the competition, I think right now for, you know, effectively reigniting old conversations and keeping up to date with leads and making sure that you stay on their radar as they go through their buying cycle. I think that's something that sales teams are still figuring out. And if you can hop on that train and learn how to leverage existing information and existing conversations to just keep yourself relevant. Like Austin said, you don't have to ask for a call. You don't really even have to sell yourself or your brand. Just staying on the radar, sharing information that's relevant, sharing news, etc. Or like Austin did in his rewrite, sharing stories, customer experiences, that is eventually going to get people to want to talk to you. But only if you do it in a way that makes you stick out from what's currently going on. So we went through examples today. Austin kind of talked about some examples that he's seen out there. So just keep that in mind. I mean, that's the game of sales. If you want to get conversations with re-engagement, we've gone through some real life examples of how people are currently doing it. So that is the bar. You learn how to beat that bar, you're going to be able to convert a lot better, because buyers over time push themselves further away from the bad strategies and draw themselves closer to the strategies that they align with. So use personalization, don't emoji to death, and instead try to bump your emails to the top of the inbox and share something new or give prospects something to think about each step. That would be kind of my final advice as we wrap up this episode on re-engagement.
And I think so. A lot of this is being driven. I do want to say this, that some of it's being driven at the rep level. Some of this behavior is driven at the management level, where they have numbers to hit. And so they're taking big batches. They're writing generic sequences, putting big batches of opportunities against it into a sequence, saying, okay, go and try and generate something. The problem that, hypothetically, this is, my sales management hat talking now, is like, managers, if you're doing that, if you do have to do large banks of opportunities, segment them out. Like, this is where being a marketer really helps come in. Segment them out. The more it's segmented, the more targeted the messaging can be. Like Grayson said earlier in the show, you could have sent that email to almost anybody that you're trying to just reschedule with. And, anyone that you had any sort of contact. It could have been to a trade show lead. It could have been to a no-show appointment, like you said, or there was if I didn't know who the company was and had spent such a large amount of time with that company, like, there was no way of knowing just from that email what was written that we had gone through almost an entire buying cycle and were probably marked as a qualified opportunity. I mean, my boss's boss was on that call with us. Like, I mean, we had money was in the room. We had all the BANT, all of the med picks, all of it, and it was devoid of that. Now, great. This is the kind of the plague of commercial sales, the small segment, the SMB sales team, is they typically are saying, gun to the head, go sell as much as you can, as fast as you can, and do it all in bulk. Whereas, I lived in enterprise land for a long time, where I was able to tailor stuff and go fly out and meet people and wine and dine and go to this show and make sure we invite there's a little bit more decorum in that. But you really can take a piece of what exists at enterprise, and if you're able to tailor and take that experience and map it to SMB, you're really going to crush it at SMB. Because right now, the bar that set is, shotgun blast everything. So if you can take it up an echelon from that, you're going to already have a lot of differentiation, like Grayson said.
Yeah, I agree. And I know we're almost at time here, but I just wanted to your point on segmentation. I totally agree. That's one of my favorite topics when it comes to really any style of sales outreach. Segmentation is everything, because not only does it continuously narrow down to make your messaging more relevant to each audience member that you're sending to, but also, in my experience, if you segment well and you understand your you understand your industry, you can flip your segmentation and create personalization out of that and say, cool, we have the buckets, they're permanently bucketed. Now all we got to do is review our CRM every quarter or every 2 quarters to reorganize the buckets, and then we go. And we have the personalization, because we either know what use cases or we know what, behaviors or et cetera that our personas go through. So just keep that in mind. I love that call out, Austin, about segmentation.
I think that's all we've got time for today, my friends. It's time to wrap up another show. Thanks for joining with us today. This has been episode 46 of SDRescue. 46.
Almost to a year. Almost.
We're nipping at the heels of a full year of episodes. So appreciate everyone who's tuning in. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, check out the Slack channel, check out the website. If you're watching this on YouTube, please comment below and let us know, connect with us, and we will glad to have you on the show, or just rewrite your email or review your email, critique it. Or if you have emails that you get sent that you want to have improved or critiqued, send them our way. We're happy to look at them.
Right on. All right. Thank you, everybody.